In the Bratva, your resume isn't on paper, it's on your skin. Every tattoo tells a chapter, where you did time, what you did, who you killed, how long you survived. Lie on a job interview and the worst that happens is you get fired. Lie on a Bratva tattoo and they'll remove it, with the skin still attached. There are 6 levels between you and the top of the Russian mafia. In most criminal organizations, you climb by showing loyalty. Here, you climb by proving you reject everything the normal world values. Family, employment, government, law, all of it. The Bratva isn't a Russian copy of the Italian mob. It's an anti-society that was born inside Stalin's forced labor camps. And to understand how it works, you need to start where everyone starts, at the bottom. You're a shestyorka. The name comes from the lowest card in the Russian 36-card deck, the 6, and that's exactly how they treat you. You're the errand boy. You carry messages, watch doors, stand lookout while the real players work. Someone needs a stolen car at 3 in the morning, you make it happen. Someone needs a package moved across town, you move it. You don't ask what's inside, you don't ask anything. You're not a member of anything. You don't get tattoos, you don't get protection, you don't get a name. If the cops grab you, nobody knows you. If you bleed out in some alley, nobody buries you. You're as disposable as that 6 in the deck, the first card everyone throws away. You're usually young, under 24, recruited from some Soviet-era neighborhood where the only options were poverty or crime. In the 80s, the Sansliyevska Bratva recruited unemployed kids straight out of the Sanslievo district in Moscow, working-class neighborhood full of aggressive young men willing to do anything for a few $100. In that neighborhood, becoming a shestyorka wasn't falling, it was the only ladder available. And the only way out of this level is simple in theory and brutal in practice. Survive long enough without talking, without complaining, and without failing. Pull that off long enough, and maybe you get the call. And when you do, everything changes, because now you're a boyevik, a warrior. Now you actually have a role. You're the muscle, collecting debts, running extortion, holding territory, executing whatever the guy above you decided needs to happen. Every boyevik works for a guy called a brigadier and has a criminal specialty. Some collect, some protect, some make things disappear. And this is where you start earning your first tattoos. But every mark on your skin has to be earned. Every single one is verified by other members. A spider tattooed on your hands, for example, if the spider faces up, it means you're still active in crime. Facing down, you're out of the game. It's not decoration, it's documentation. And if someone finds out you inked something you didn't live through, the trial is quick and the verdict is permanent. The risk at this level is the most direct and physical in the entire hierarchy. You're on the streets, you're in the territorial wars. In the 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Moscow became a battlefield between the Slavic Bratva and the Chechen Mafia. Shootouts in restaurants, ambushes in movie theaters, executions in parking lots. During the war over the Kazakhstan cinema in Moscow, 6 Chechens and 4 Russians died in a single night. The Boyeviks were the front line. Most didn't last 2 years at this level, not because they got promoted, because they got killed. But let's say you didn't die. Let's say you collected enough, protected enough, survived enough. Now you're a brigadier, autorietet, authority. And here, the nature of the game changes completely. You're not on the streets doing the dirty work anymore. You're ordering it done. You run a brigade of 5 to 6 men. You pay tribute up, you collect tribute down. You're basically a captain. But here's the detail that separates the Bratva from every other organization on the planet. To reach this level, you need to have done time in prison, not as a setback, as a prerequisite. Prison time in the Bratva isn't a stain on your record, it is your record. The more time you spent inside, the more respect you carry outside. Because prison is where the Bratva's code actually runs. That's where the rules get tested, where the trials happen, where the weak get separated from those who deserve to rise. Vladimir Kumarin understood this better than anyone.
Known as the Night Governor of St. Petersburg, he went down for racketeering in the 90s, and by the time he walked out, he already had the connections to run the Tambovska Bratva, the second largest criminal organization in Russia. He ended up as deputy president of St. Petersburg's top fuel trading company, PTK, running a criminal empire underneath a corporate front, both sides of the counter at the same time, and nobody dared touch him. Now, one step higher, things become less about muscle and more about trust, because here you're a Soviet Nick, the counselor. You're not the guy who gives orders, you're the guy who gives orders listens to before making any decision. Think of the consigliere in the Italian mob, but with a key difference. In the Bratva, the Soviet Nick often has more prison time and more scars than the boss himself. He's the keeper of tradition. He knows the Vorovskoy Zakon, the thieves' law, better than anyone alive, and he's fluent in Fenya, the secret language of the Russian underworld. We're not talking street slang. Fenya is an entire language, hundreds of words drawn from Yiddish, Romanian, and 19th century peddler dialects. Pickpockets had 400 exclusive terms. Gamblers had 200. If you don't speak Fenya, you don't belong. And if you don't belong, you don't sit at the table. Because the Soviet Nick is the one who calls the skod, the Bratva's court. When a vor breaks the code, when a brigadier steals, when someone talks to the police, it's the skod that judges, and the judgment is final. There's a ritual called earthing. When a vor breaks the code, he's spun around several times to strip his duke, his spirit. Then he's pushed against a wall and stabbed repeatedly. No drama, no speeches, just the code being enforced. And the person responsible for financing all of this is the obchak, the treasurer. This might be the most contradictory level in the entire hierarchy. The obchak is simultaneously one of the most powerful and most watched men in the organization. He manages the communal fund, the obchak, which is the financial backbone of the Bratva. This fund existed since Stalin's gulags. In prison, it started as cigarettes, tea, and canned food shared among inmates. Outside prison, it evolved into millions of dollars. Every criminal operating in the territory pays a tax of 5 to 10% of their profits into the fund. Pickpockets, dealers, car thieves, extortionists, everybody contributes. A contribution is called a share, and refusing to pay is considered a direct insult to the thieves' culture. That money funds everything: criminal operations, bribes to government officials, legal defense for imprisoned members, and support for the families of those who died in service. It's an organized crime pension system. But here's the catch: whoever controls that money gets audited with a ferocity that would make any accounting firm look soft. In 2015, in the penal colonies of Russia's Ryazan prison, a skod ordered an audit of the local obchak. They found irregularities in the financial records. The man responsible for the books, a vor with years of reputation, had his criminal status publicly degraded. In the Bratva, that's worse than a prison sentence. It's social death. You lose everything you ever built. The Santslievska Bratva, which the FBI has called the most powerful Eurasian crime group in the world, runs its obchak through a 12-member council that oversees the finances. Estimates put its organization's annual revenue at over $8 billion. $8 billion, more than some countries' GDP. And somebody has to manage that money. Somebody has to make sure every cent is where it should be. If you're that person, you hold more power than most brigadiers. But if a single number doesn't add up, if a single share goes missing, you won't get fired. You'll get earthed.
And now, the top. The level that makes everything before it look like training. Because at this point, you're no longer just a criminal. You're a vor vezakon, a thief in law. And this title isn't a promotion, it's a coronation, literally. To become a vor, you need to be crowned, koronovan, by consensus of several other vori who already hold the title. Money isn't enough. Power isn't enough. You need a documented criminal record, intelligence, charisma, leadership. And above all, you need to have lived the code without exception. Never held a formal job, never served in the military,
never cooperated with any authority under any circumstance for any reason. While an Italian mob boss can be a businessman on the surface and a criminal underneath, the Vor rejects any connection to the system. No official family, no registered property. He doesn't exist on government paper. He exists only in the thieves' world. And his body, by this point, is a complete document. 8 pointed stars on the shoulders, the universal mark of the Vor. Cathedrals on the chest, each dome representing a conviction served. Crucifix with a crown, leader of a thieving family. Madonna and child, in crime since childhood. Every image is a verifiable chapter, and any Vor who looks at another can read his entire life in seconds. At the very top of the structure sits the Pakan, the boss who coordinates multiple brigades and rarely shows his face. He operates through intermediaries and keeps dedicated spies to monitor his brigadiers, making sure nobody gets too powerful. Paranoia isn't a flaw at this level, it's a survival tool. And nobody illustrates what it means to be a Vor better than Vyacheslav Ivankov, nicknamed Yaponchik, Little Japanese, because of his faintly Asian features. Ivankov was crowned Vor of Zakon at the infamous Butyrka prison in 1974. He spent a decade in some of Russia's most brutal labor camps, and behind those walls became the most feared Vor of his generation. But he is the detail that shows how the code really worked. Even locked up, Ivankov was running a criminal empire on the outside. Through corrupted prison officials, he kept contact with his patrons and allies beyond the wire. He lived with privileges most free Soviet citizens would have envied. In 1991, after serving 10 years, released early by public figures petitioning Gorbachev and Yeltsin directly, Ivankov received a mission. The Soltantsevskaya Bratva sent him to the United States to consolidate Russian criminal networks on American soil. He arrived in New York in March 1992 and set up in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, Little Odessa, the heart of the Soviet immigrant community. Russia's Interior Ministry warned the FBI that Ivankov had come to manage and control Russian organized crime activities in this country. The FBI took the warning seriously, but Ivankov was slippery. It took 3 years to catch him. On June 8, 1995, the FBI finally grabbed him in Brooklyn. At the time of his arrest, Ivankov had thousands of dollars in cash and 7 fake passports from different countries on him. A .38 caliber revolver wrapped in a sock was thrown from his apartment window as agents moved in. As he was led out of FBI headquarters in Manhattan, Ivankov, a stocky, well-groomed man known for his charm, kicked and spat at photographers. In prison, when questioned, he accused the FBI of inventing the myth of the Russian mafia to justify their existence of their own Russian division. He was sentenced to nearly 10 years, deported to Russia in 2004, and then, on July 28, 2009, walking out of a restaurant in Moscow, he was shot by a sniper. He died 73 days later. At his funeral, hundreds of crime bosses from across the former Soviet Union showed up. Every organization sent tributes. One wreath read, "From the Dagestani Bratva," another, "From the Kazakh Bratva." An elaborate arrangement came from Aslan Usoyan, Grandfather Hassan, Moscow's most powerful crime boss. Even in death, the hierarchy was there. Every wreath was a rank, every tribute an acknowledgement of position. That's what the Bratva is. Not a business, not a family. It's a system that was born in Stalin's gulags and survived everything because it adapts. But there's one thing the old Vori didn't see coming. After the fall of the USSR, a new generation of Russian criminals started buying the title of Vor of Zakon. Instead of earning the coronation through decades of prison and absolute obedience to the code, these new criminals simply paid hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of rubles to get crowned. The old god Vori have a name for them. They call them apelsinovi, oranges, bought, not grown. The code is dying. The tattoos are losing their meaning. Fenya is being forgotten. But as long as the Russian prison system exists, and it does, with hundreds of thousands of inmates today, there'll be someone inking stars on shoulders, someone collecting shares for the Obshchak, someone deciding who deserves to rise and who deserves to fall. Because the game changes shape, but it never changes nature.